Hour 6 is upon us. Secretary, call the roll, please.
Directors Huang, Akbari,
Here.
Sethy,
Here.
Weed,
Here.
and Gunther.
Here. Director Weed, could you lead us this evening in our salute to the flag?
Please join.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, public comments. Moving on, we have a special presentation this evening.
Yes, we do. Tonight, I'd like to introduce a special presentation that we have, informational presentation by Catherine Mallon, the Executive Director of the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority. And Ms. Mallon has come down today from Sacramento to share some information with the board, and we're very delighted to have her here today. She's leading a team to bring about a Delta conveyance project to benefit the State Water Project. So I know she's going to share a few words about her background in her presentation, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Mallon and give her a warm ACWD welcome.
Great. Can you hear me okay? All right, so thank you for the invitation to speak and share some thoughts on the Delta conveyance. I am the new executive director for the DCA. I've been on the job for about 7 months now. I feel like I'm just starting to scratch the surface of California water politics, and I'm just glad that I'm doing the engineering because I think that might be one of the easiest jobs on this program right now. I am a registered civil engineer. I started my career back in the early 1990s here in California. In fact, I remembered on the invite that I actually interviewed for a job here at Alameda County Water District in something around 1993 or 94.
Whoa.
Yeah. Most of my experience is in design and construction of water infrastructure, and I spent 8 years in New York City where I managed the city's $14 billion 10-year capital program. So in that capacity, I gained a lot of experience in implementing large, complex, and controversial public infrastructure projects, which I think has served me pretty well these first 7 months here on this program. On the Delta conveyance, I can't and don't have a lot of information to share with you at this time as we wait for the notice of preparation to be released where the definition of the project will be included. But I can describe in sort of high-level terms what we're up to at the DCA. So as you all are aware, the proposed project to build 3 intakes and 2 40-foot diameter tunnels to convey upwards of 9,000 CFS of Sacramento River water from the North Delta and connecting the existing state project water system in the Delta was that project took a slight detour when the governor in his State of States speech shrunk the project from 2 tunnels to 1 tunnel. So we are starting the environmental process all over again. All permit applications and permits that were secured were withdrawn. So in this particular phase, the governor and Secretary Crowfoot have asked us to build on the past work, but also to take a fresh look and forge a new path forward. So that's what we've been thinking about over the past few months as we ramp back up into this new permitting process. And so this is what I think about in terms of our path forward. I personally think that starting over on this proposed project is a good idea. The project has been simplified. Now it's merely a tunnel. It's not a canal or a levee rehab program or a desal plant or a lot of the other alternatives that were assessed in the previous process. So this will be easier both to concept engineer, and I think it will be easier for the public to follow and comment during the permit process. We also got a clear idea in the last process of what some of the critical issues were, and we can now focus on addressing those issues in the new set of documents. And it also allows us to create a new path forward in how we engage with the various stakeholders. I'm a true believer in the importance of community engagement and emphasizing the public and public infrastructure. So the proposed Delta project, it's extremely important to the state and its economy with 27 million Californians, 750,000 acres of ag land. They rely on the state water project. And having it travel through the Delta with 1,100 miles of man-made levees and over 100 islands, many are sinking due to the soft peat soils, it creates a vulnerability in that branch of the system. And then as sea level rise and storm intensities increase and the land continues to subside, the risks only increase. So first and foremost, I think the state and the state water contractors need to do a really great job of laying out the foundation for why this project is so important and what the consequences might be without it. We do spend a lot of time listening to the voices in the Delta, and I do think that is extremely critical, but I also think that we need to get the broader state stakeholders more involved. There's a significant amount of public support statewide in investing and maintaining critical and vital infrastructure, and I think those voices need to be heard as well. As for the Delta community and the various organizations representing cultural and environmental interests, I've met with quite a few of them since I've been here, and it's obvious to me that there's a significant amount of mistrust. They very much, most of them I can say, dislike this project, and for many of them there's good reason. For example, the Delta is not a place that easily facilitates the hundreds of trucks and the thousands of workers that would need to snake their way through the Delta roads and existing rails and bargeways. So it leaves the Delta community with a significant brunt of the impact, but it's not their water supply. That's not the water that they drink. So it's these particular type of infrastructure projects where the benefits are a bit remote from the impacts that can be really, really challenging to get support on. And there's also a lot of skepticism out there. The project has a lot of reliance on models that predict the impact of water quality and flows and the impacts to fish populations in the Delta. And you know, I think reading the newspaper these days, trust government is not a bumper sticker that I see very often. But I'm an optimist by nature, and I do have experience in difficult situations. And I do have faith that we can sit together at a table and break bread and empathize with each other's goals, share information, and have a conversation on how best to incorporate their knowledge of the Delta into all of our design work. And we've already begun that dialogue with the community with the kickoff of the DCA Stakeholder Engagement Committee last night, which is hosted by the DCA Board. It's comprised of a diverse array of Delta interests who have all taken a leap of faith to work with us on the engineering schemes. They have my deep appreciation. Most were vocal opponents of the Water Fix project, but they've decided that if the project should be approved, at least they've done their best to voice their concerns and advocate for their issues in the documents. So I'm looking forward to engaging with them over the upcoming months as we start the design process. We're also going to be looking for ways to create win-wins in everything we do, looking at how the project can fit in with some of the longer-term visions of the Delta, how we can support local businesses, create facilities with dual purpose, maybe relieve some of the existing transportation bottlenecks that we would also need relieved as part of our project, and invest in worker programs. And that's just a short list of some of the things where we can create what I call win-wins. When you have a program this large, well over $10 billion in design and construction, that kind of infusion of capital has the potential to create opportunity as well. We also want to walk the walk on climate change. If we're going to make the case that this project is important to address a changing planet and a changing climate, it would be a bit ironic to turn around and have construction, which contributes to greenhouse gas, not be addressed as well. So we hope to set a new bar in sustainable construction materials and methods. We're looking for out-of-the-box ideas on minimizing our carbon footprint and finding offsets where we need to. We want to partner with as many institutions locally and in the state and organizations that have good ideas on how exactly to do this. And we've already started dialogue with people within state government that are interested in construction methodologies and greenhouse gas, and we'll be looking to projects like high-speed rail, who have spent a lot of time and invested energy in developing sustainability plans. So as for schedule, DWR hopes to have a notice of preparation out sometime before the end of the year, and that's what kicks off the CEQA process, and a draft document for public review by the end of next year. So that means that the DCA, who is the engineer for the project, will have to have our draft concept engineering reports for all of the identified alternatives submitted to DWR in the fall of next year. And then the state has set a goal of trying to secure all of the key permits by the end of 2022, so that's just a little over 3 years from now. The DCA board has been very supportive in funding a healthy budget for the DCA this year to allow us to conduct world-class engineering and field work and make sure we identify the best technical solutions for the planning documents. They've also supported funding for extensive stakeholder engagement to ensure that we are a good neighbor working collaboratively with the impacted communities to solve problems. So I think the fact that after a dozen years we're doing a restart on this program is a testament to just how challenging it's going to be. But there have been a lot of lessons learned over the years, and we've taken them to heart, and I'm hoping 3 years from now we're going to have a good story to share with all of you. I don't pretend to know the answer right now, but I am looking forward to a process of really excellent engineering, excellent science, healthy commitment to engagement with the local and statewide interests to come up with an optimal project. I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
Boy. One of the challenges of sitting on the end of the board is you start off, but welcome. Thank you for your efforts in all of this. You're going through a fair amount of money now, as I understand, on your project and in this process. What is your current burn rate?
Oh, I think it was about $2 million a month. There's a lot of engineering work going on right now.
Okay. Is the total dollar scope this remain the same, or have you defined anything under $19 billion?
Have we done a cost estimate for the project? We're working on building a cost model so that as the project gets defined that we can plug in the specifics of that project. But the cost model is really a tool that we use to, I don't know if you know, the cost model spurs off the construction schedule, which spurs off things like truck traffic and air emissions. So we're creating this integrated model of which cost is a component of it.
Now, as I understand, the Met has offered to pick up the tab. And they had come up with a number that they felt they could pay for. So do you have any feel at all what the current scale of the project is in dollar amounts?
I'd like to comment on that when the NOP comes out and we have a defined project.
All right. Next on the... I'll jump to the timeline. I go back to D.C. every year for the last number of years with the Aqua, go visit Aqua East, and we call Tin Cup Week, looking for money. And Garamendi has each year speaks to the group, and in each year promises 10 years of litigation. Do you have any feel or response to the potential for extended litigation that would take you beyond the 2022 target date?
I mean, I'm not an attorney, and the litigation would be against the planning work, which is being led by DWR. So, I mean, anything I tell you is hearsay, but they do anticipate litigation. It's a big CEQA process. It would be unusual not to see litigation.
And that is or is not built into your 2022 timeline?
It would not be.
Definition of programs and projects. First of all, I support the tunnels, so let me help.
Excellent.
It helps
I'm
to
glad to
have
hear.
it clear, and this board does as well.
Yeah.
We need a Delta conveyance. It's unfortunate we didn't have this board. The prior board supported the Perfield Canal. 80% of our electorate voted against it. So we have a long history as a district of being supportive of some type of a method of getting around the Delta, or through, under, or over. But on the list of programs, even if you do get the Delta program, we still have to get the water to us, and that's the South Bay Aqueduct, which I would argue is at the end of its service life. 50 years ago, when I started in the game, a little over 50 years ago, then for Santa Clara County Flood Control and Water District, we had a wonderful system. but it looks that now it's it was built with different standards on soil conditions and earth slides, etc. But it's part of the state water system. Is there a possibility that we could include a retrofit of the South Bay Aqueduct as part of the Cal water fix? And if so, what would be the point at which we would try to introduce that?
I mean, I would assume that this agency's had those conversations with DWR.
Not necessarily.
No, that's outside my purview. I mean, I'm the DCA. We're here to design and build the project that comes out of the CEQA process. Right now we're doing engineering services to feed DWR's planning work to get ready for the NOP, and then we'll move into starting to do, you know, concept engineering development of the project that's developed. As in terms of the connection for the rest of the system, that clearly sits with DWR. I can't comment on it.
Yeah. Ironically, about 20 years ago, we looked at the South Bay Aqueduct contractors seriously considered trying to acquire the South Bay Aqueduct out of concerns with DWR, and feeling that we had paid for it, it should be handed to us.
And I do actually feel like I have my hands full now, too.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Just for the record.
You know, I was at a meeting on the San Francisco estuary, and the water master for the Delta indicated that they could handle another 2 feet of sea level rise. After that, all bets are off unless they could beef up their reservoirs. Is there any chance that that would ever be included in the California water fix, to your mind?
I mean, certainly as part of the project, there will be modeling done on what the impact of sea level rise will need it as a design criteria for the design of some of the key elements of the project to make sure that we're above the future level. So that work's all to come.
Okay. And this ties to the litigation threat. I'm one of those who believes the Delta, along with the Corps of Engineers 20 years ago, that the Delta is doomed to be an inland Salton Sea, and we're now have gone through denial and into anger. And so that will progress through the 4 steps. But it'll be a very well studied and its demise. So you have a huge challenge ahead of you.
Yeah.
The engineering criteria for the original tunnels was changed midway through to one which would have a gradual slope, starting at the upper end and then dropping under gravity, and then being pumped up near Clifton Court. Is that still, in your understanding, the technology that will be proposed?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's a tunnel.
And other alternatives that one might throw in there would. So you feel we're pretty well locked into the design concept of a tunnel.
The governor's announcement was to do a tunnel, so that's what DWR has been pursuing, and what the Secretary Crowfoot has been talking about publicly.
And if that were to change, it would put a whole new change in the whole system if we had to go to a different route. Okay, so you've gotten, I think, the gist of my concerns, and we'll see where we go from. But thank you for your service.
Yeah, sure.
Catherine, thank you for being with us tonight and
You bet.
giving us all this information. I would like to take advantage of this opportunity right now while you're here to help inform the public as to what is going on in just a broad way.
Mm-hmm.
As Director Weed mentioned, our community has voted twice overwhelmingly against any Delta conveyance, despite the fact that every board since the 1960s, 50s actually, at this water district has voted unanimously in favor of a Delta conveyance, whether it was the peripheral canal or the tunnels or tunnel now. So we have a real challenge in our community educating people as to the value of what we're working on right now. And we also, and this may be helpful for you, we were the first investors in the State Water Project in California with the help of former Governor Pat Brown. And we invested in Oroville Dam and the whole system in 1962. In 64, we became part of the Hetch Hetchy system. So we have a long history of supporting a solution in the Delta, despite the vehemence of our community against it. And so we always have to remind people that they think the water's going to Southern California and that they're stealing Northern California water. But as we all tried to say in the community, we are part of Southern California. Anything south of the Delta is part of Southern California, and we are. So is Zone 7 and Santa Clara Valley Water District.
Yeah.
So we have our own challenges here in terms of educating our community. Second, we have, and I'm saying this for the benefit of the community, both a Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority and a Delta Conveyance Finance Authority. I sit on that Finance Authority with Director Gary Kremen from Santa Clara Valley Water District.
Yep.
And the General Manager of Zone 7 is on our board too. And then Sarah Palmer from Zone 7 is on your board.
That's right.
Yeah.
She's out looking at sandhill cranes right now.
So we're expecting to have the Executive Director of the Finance Authority here as well in the future. And we don't know what we're looking at. Might be $15 billion,
Yep.
Up to $20 billion. By the time you factor in inflation and completion of this project, it could be a lot more, right?
Yep.
Also, for the benefit of the community, if anyone wants to look up the very detailed plans that you have and schedules, it's available at www.dcdca.org, right?
I do a monthly report, and we try to
Right.
be as detailed as possible.
Right, and the last report from a couple of months ago I found very nourishing. It was an exhaustive look in detail at everything that the Design and Construction Authority is working on right now.
Yeah, we're trying to be very transparent with the public.
Right. And in that regard, I really like the efforts that you're making to meet with all of the community groups and concerns, the NGOs in the Delta. I think that if I had any criticism of the project to date, it's that the water districts that are in Southern California don't see it so far as beneficial in their interest to come up here and to talk to people. And I think we need to communicate with people more.
I not as the DCA, but as me personally, I have gone down to Southern California, and I think that would be very helpful. I think everyone who is paying and participating in this project should spend some time in the Delta advocating on behalf of what it does for you as an agency and how it creates reliability. I think being a general manager, quite honestly, of a water utility in California is a job that it's a pretty tough job, and it's one that I don't think the lay person quite understands the responsibility that exists there. So, yeah, I have advocated the same thing, and and I think that we will be seeing more of that in the future.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, if you could give us the 3-year picture that I've seen on from your presentations on what we're spending. I think we've made commitments of around $70 million so far, and it's going all the way up to close to $300 million over 3 years.
Yeah, the 3-year budget that I put together for the JEPA was $350 million during this planning period, and it seems like a lot during the planning period. But what that's based on is there is a desire by the state water contractors that despite the fact that we're redoing this permit period for 3 years, they don't want to lose 3 years on the overall schedule. So a lot of that budget is tied to doing design on the early works projects and getting those ready for construction. And there will be quite a few of them, as you can imagine, around the logistics and the Delta, the amount of work that needs to take place to prepare for the major components of the project. And then we would like to get started on some of those feature components of the project during this permit phase. So what that budget is allowing us to do is to not lose time during this period and just keep moving things along. And of course, it's something that could be perceived as doing work at risk. So it'll be up to the state water contractors and the board to see if they want to follow that plan.
Mm-hmm.
But I've prepared the budget in anticipation of that plan. Whether it is approved or not is clearly up to, the board and the state water contractors.
Can you lastly elucidate for the audience here some of the major topical areas in program management that are being covered right now, like real estate, geotechnical,
Sure.
possible eminent domain?
Yeah, I mean, we're running this like a program. So we have programmatic functions, and then the projects, at some point we will break into a discrete set of individual projects, and each project will be delivered the same way. So programmatically, we have a risk manager, and we're now putting together our risk management documents that support some of the engineering and mitigation work that we're thinking about, risk mitigation, that is. We have a safety group that will set the safety standards, a sustainability group. We don't have all these people in place, and they're certainly not working full-time right now, but we've set it up programmatically. We have a project controls group that has procurement and scheduling and cost controls. We have an engineering manager that runs an engineering group that's doing that's where most of the work is taking place. We have a stakeholder engagement manager, general counsel, and a treasurer. So it is, I think people take this for granted, but we are a brand new state authority. We essentially start with a blank sheet of paper. We have to build policies and procedures in a procurement group and build systems and there's a lot to build to create an authority. Right now, while we're still in the planning period, we can kind of take our time. But when you see early on, like you talked about the burn rate, there's a lot of engineering work going on, but there's a lot of work that needs to take place just to set an organization up and set up all of our project management information systems and cost management systems and just getting all the computers set up in the IT program and whatnot. So a lot of what I call foundational work is going on right now that's going to grease the skids for us to move into those other phases of the program.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Can I add one quick factoid? We're 1% of the state project, so for every billion, 10 million out of our ratepayers' pockets.
Yeah.
At 20 billion, we were looking at a $200 million contribution to the effort.
Yeah.
Even if the Met paid, they'd expect to be reimbursed after it was built. So our annual budget, about 100 million in revenues plus 50 million in capital. Well, total budget with capital is running about 150 million. So it's more than an annual budget. So it's an interesting challenge for us, and it helps keep some sense of perspective when we talk about the numbers.
Yeah, just philosophically, the way I look at this is when you bring in the most talented engineers, they're going to come up with really smart ideas to do things less expensively. So that's really where I want to focus. It's, most of this program cost is going to be in construction, so the smarter we are right now, especially in these early planning phases, that's where you're really actually going to save the money. So get the right, really fantastic engineers, get the world-class independent technical reviews now, and that'll set the stage for a good value project down the road.
Right. And the other aspect of this is it's no new water. Well, we might get a little bit on the Article 21 aspects, but this is for water quality. This is not a water supply project for us. It's in the sense of additional water resources for our IRP. So it's a major hit.
Yeah.
For cost.
I have one other comment that you just reminded me of. for anybody that's interested, there are some really good materials and a couple books on the building of the channel between England and France, which is roughly the same mileage that we're going to cover under the Delta, about 40 miles, 42 miles. And all of the challenges that those engineering organizations went through. And let me tell you, it is a real eye-opener to, it actually is very gripping.
Yeah.
You're fascinated by everything that they were doing to build the tunnels under the channel there. So I highly recommend looking up some of that source material.
Yeah. I've been in some of the tunnels in New York, and, you know, being dropped 800 feet below ground in these, you know, rock shafts going into these tunnels, it's, you know, I don't know, for a civil engineer, it's like a religious experience.
Well, Director Weed and I have gone through the same thing.
Yeah, it's something else. And I'm hoping, you know, when we're under construction, there's a lot of opportunity for people throughout the state and in schools, and certainly people in the Delta to experience that as well. These projects don't come along very often.
We had a glass of champagne just to celebrate getting through after we were done.
It would have been far less expensive, and you already own, the Met owns the right-of-way to have done cut and cover with siphons at the channels. But as San Francisco found out, they spent another couple $100 million to tunnel underneath the bay so they wouldn't have to sit at the table with the environmentalist.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you coming out and talking to our community tonight. I know you're very busy, and so you taking the time out is much appreciated by all of us here.
Thank you.
I think some of the questions that I had were already asked by my colleagues here. One question that I did have, you touched upon utilizing some new greener technologies as part of the construction. Can you maybe go into some of those technologies that you'd be implementing, and,
Sure.
and how that would affect the total cost of the project?
We haven't gotten into cost estimating yet. So some of the things that we're thinking about, I don't know if you're aware, but concrete is about 7% of global greenhouse gas emissions, and there are mixed designs that are out there that both can be done, can be made with creating less greenhouse gas, and then you can also embed carbon within the mixed design, so we're going to be exploring that. I know that High-Speed Rail has looked at that and has got a lot of testing on that, so we'll piggyback where we can on that. We're obviously looking at using as much electric vehicles as possible for transport of goods and services and people, and we've got ideas on how to do that. You know, trying to stay away from, if we can, diesel generators and things like that that create a lot of emissions. So, and then looking at offsets too. You know, I find it interesting in the Delta that there's a lot of carbon emissions just off the land. When the oxygen reacts with the carbon in the soil, it actually emits CO2. So there's actually opportunities for offsets just through land management. And the Delta is an area where they've been trying to get on the carbon market, essentially, with trading. So there's a lot going on there. It's really interesting. California, as usual, is on the forefront of a lot of this technology. So we're going to learn a lot from what everybody else is doing, and add a couple of our own twists to it. So.
And are there particular KPIs that you guys are tracking at the DCA on, you know, CO2 emissions or things like that you could kind of quantify after the project is completed?
Yeah, we'll get into that as we mature as an organization, certainly before we get into any of the design phases. We haven't done that yet, but that is on, you know, the to-do list, is setting up those KPIs. As soon as we become a little bit mature, we plan to have a sustainability manager and a group that establishes the plan and helps us implement and measure. So that's all part of the future building of the organization. But it's something that's on the forefront of the minds of all of our engineers right now as they approach the design work.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank you for coming down.
It actually was a really relaxing train ride, so it wasn't, you know.
Came down to the Capitol, I think?
I did.
I guess being from the New York project, I'm slightly familiar with it. Actually, I grew up in Connecticut, it's just back there. That'll help you out here.
Mm-hmm.
I just hope you don't get discouraged. I personally somewhat am a little discouraged. This is a very friendly board, by the way, to come to.
Yeah.
I mean, we support the project. We were right up front when it came to funding. It was, we got to do this.
Yeah.
It's frustrating when we know 80% of our constituency at one point voted against it. That's we have to get that message, you know. But if you need a friendly board, we're here.
I probably need you a lot, you know.
And your being here is valuable because it hopefully a small portion of the public may finally get educated into, yes, this project's important for us.
Yeah.
I just hope I see it in my lifetime. I don't want to get discouraging here, but high-speed rail, we should have been able to build that. And we just cut it in half. The tunnels, we've taken a step backward. Like I said, I appreciate your keep going, keep the faith. I will keep the faith.
Yeah.
It's taken us, though, 20 years
Mm-hmm.
to build a fish ladder that everybody wanted, and we all tried, and one day I'm sitting in a meeting, how long have we been talking about this? It was 97. We're still building one of them. That's a fish ladder that everybody wanted. Well, except for one director. But effectively, everybody wanted.
Yeah.
And so I hope that we as a state see the need. I think some of the value, too, of the LA coming up,
Yep.
talking to the Delta.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm somewhat appalled that Garamendi will say what he does.
Well,
But that's the life and political atmosphere we live in. And once again, though, some of that's our responsibility up here. And we're there for you. We support you.
thank you.
There's a friendly face here. We are actually in the Bay Area. There are other friendly faces in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
And I think it's critical to this project that people know there are friendly faces in what some people might call Northern California, even though you're right. We're south of the Delta. But when people find out you're from the Bay Area and you support this project, it's like, yeah, we do. And you should too. So once again, thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
Keep the faith.
I will. I'll say this, a couple things on that, if you don't mind, but when Hurricane Sandy hit New York, I was plucked out of DEP and I did the first round of the emergency housing recovery, and I saw people when they were at their most desperate, needed government the most. They were angry, they were frustrated, and I found that being approachable, being honest, being transparent, sharing information, reaching out, having a 24/7 phone so that if you have a question, you know who you can call, and having accountability, people appreciate it. I think with our committee meeting last night, you saw 20 people in a room who had been vocal opponents of this project that sat and listened, spoke, shared information, shared concerns, were, I think at the end of the day, nationally it's hard building infrastructure. It's not just a California thing. The American Society of Civil Engineers doesn't give us a great scorecard on infrastructure across the country. They're hard to do. It's expensive, and it affects ratepayers in their pockets at a time when, it may be difficult. So these projects are really hard. And the best that we can do is just keep an open dialogue, keep communication, try to be as creative as we can in solving issues, be very mindful of the money that we're spending, of course, at the same time. But I don't have faith necessarily that we're going to get these permits because I don't have some crystal ball. But what I do have faith in is that if we do the best that we can and run a process with integrity, that's your best shot at getting a good outcome. Plus, I'm super stubborn, so I'm not going anywhere anytime soon.
I think the comment you made about the working with the community, because they're the ones who are going to have to suffer the burden of the construction, something I actually never thought of until you mentioned that. So I think that's very important with the Delta community. I think that'll go a long way.
It's one of
So
the
thank
first
you.
things I noticed when I drove the Delta. Actually, during the interview process, I took a drive around there. That's definitely not a place that was designed to withstand a $15 billion project. So we're going to get creative.
Further comments?
President Gunther, if you would, and I talked to Catherine beforehand, I'd like to leave her with a parting gift of history because she's working with so many
Absolutely.
different of our state water contractors, so that you put us in perspective in the future with your other agencies that you're meeting. So I'll make this relatively short. Some of it you may already know, but and Megan over there has heard me say this many times. So our San Francisco Bay was discovered by the Portola expedition only in 1769. That's relatively short distance back in history. And the De Anza expedition came through next with women and children and formation of families, and they established the Spanish, one of our first missions in California, right here in Fremont, up by the hills, across from Director Weed's home. Mission San Jose. It became the most productive of all of the missions in California in agricultural production, and the reason the mission was established here was because of our groundwater supply. The Alameda Creek is the largest outflow of fresh water into the interior bay until you go back to the Sacramento and San Joaquin rivers, and it bisects our Tri-City community of Fremont, Newark, and Union City. So they had abundant water supply here, fish and game and other things, and so things took off. Before the gold rush, before the formation of the state of California, this Tri-City area was the commercial hub of all of California, from the Oregon border down to the Mexican border. This was the commercial hub. And then when the gold rush took off, this Tri-City community flourished even more, and there were many multimillionaires made in our community, supplying the miners. And Highway 680 out of Fremont, and Highway 580 up to Stockton,
Yep.
and then the highways that go out the backside of Stockton, that was all called Old Miners Road. And all the produce and everything that was grown here, durable produce like potatoes, cabbage, beets, was being sent up to the mountains. And then we had lots of ships going up to the new formation of San Francisco. And that's where Union City gets its name from, the steamer, the Union, which was going back and forth. And we were delivering fresh water from here in thousands of barrels a day to San Francisco because there was no fresh water up there. Many years later, we had an early water district that preceded this one, the Washington Township and Murray Township Water District, that covered our Tri-City area and the Tri-Valley area, with the fathers and grandfathers of some of our founders here of this district. We are the first and oldest county water district in the state of California, formed in 1914. And so any other county water district is formed under the same County Water District Act, originated by our founders. And we've only had 34 directors in 105 years. If you eliminate the 5 of us here on the board today, and you look at the board that we have here, many of our streets and schools are named after these forerunners for the district, including Grimmer Boulevard in front of the district here, which is named after Dr. Grimmer, down at the end of the middle row. And so There's a real storied history here, and I'd be happy to share more with you when I see you next up in Sacramento. But I wanted to leave you with some image of our district against the other districts out there.
That's lovely. Right now, you guys are number one. My book.
That history has been documented, and hopefully we'll be able to provide you that document.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
We really appreciate your coming down.
You bet.
Always welcome to come down and keep us updated. Like I said before, I think we're a friendly audience. We're supportive. And anything that you could put that might get into the Bay Area just helps.
Yep,
It's great.
you bet.
And the Capital Corridor right away.
Yep. It's a great train ride. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take a break.
I hope so.
Hope it's for
I apologize for having to leave a little early. I have to catch the train.
I know, yeah. I actually work for Caltrain, so. Robert Ward, tell him, slow it down, Robert.
We're coming.
So then moving on to consent calendar, correct? Would any board members like to add any items to the consent calendar this evening?
I'll make the motion to add items 5.1 to 5.6 to the consent calendar.
Motion, do we have a
I'll
second?
second.
We have a motion
And
and a second?
Before we
Please let me know here.
approve the calendar, I just wanted to make one note. We've got in front of you an updated resolution for item number 4.6, amending the personnel budget to add one chemist position, and that update was made to be consistent with the information provided in the staff report. So just wanted to highlight that before you take on that item.
So I have a motion and I have a second. So Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye. Motion to move the consent calendar as amended.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Sethi,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye. Okay, we would have a request to move item 5.9, I believe it is, to the top of the agenda for this evening. Be nice if it votes. So, we have no concerns. We'd like to move on to item 5.9.
Ready to go? Okay. Thank you very much. Tonight we have item 5.9 as the presentation of the Alameda County Water District's audited financial statements for the fiscal year. So I will turn it over to Mr. Wunderlich to open this item.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Heides. And the district secretary is distributing hard copies of the presentation that our auditor will provide in just a moment. But first, to summarize, the district prepares a comprehensive annual financial report, or CAFR, each year that is comprised of an introduction with an overview of the district and recent accomplishments, management analysis of the financial statements and related notes. This is where I would comment that the related notes are about 12 times as long as the financial statements themselves and make for some excellent reading. And statistical and historical information about the district. The Poon Group LLP, as the district's new auditor, recently completed its audit of the district's financial statements and issued an unmodified opinion. The auditor presented their results to the Finance Committee on October 15th, 2019, and will provide a supplemental presentation during the board meeting this evening. Acceptance of the CAFR will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 3.3, promote financial transparency. So the recommendation on this item is by motion to accept the audited financial statements and accompanying reports for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2019. Typically, at this meeting, we would also hand out hard copies of the CAFR to the board. We will have those ready to hand out at the December meeting, but I can let you know that the final version of the CAFR is available on the district website. We just don't have the hard copies ready to hand out yet. So with that introduction, I will turn the time over to Ken Poon, the Managing Director of the Poon Group, who will present the results.
Thank you, John. Good evening, directors. My name is Ken Poon. I'm the managing partner of the Poon Group and also one of the partners on this particular engagement. So what I'm going through tonight is actually going through the scope of work. I understand that one of my partners, Vanessa Burke, has sat down with the Finance Committee to go over the detail of the numbers and the footnote disclosure and answer any questions that the Finance Committee has. So tonight my goal is actually to give you guys some highlight of the report and then going through our audit results. So tonight, let's go through the scope of work. So I pull out the overview of financial statements so that you can see your financial position, the change in your financial position, and the a condensed statement of cash flow. Very importantly, the pension and OPEB information is really quite highly scrutinized by a lot of people, so I also would like to pull out the information so that you can see the trend analysis on your pension and OPEB liabilities for the past 5 years. Going through our audit results, and then if you may have questions after the meeting, I also have my contact information included in my presentation here. So the scope of work. Actually, we are the new auditor for the district. So the district has engaged us to perform the audit for the fiscal year end June 30, 2019 for the Alameda County Water District. So including in your package is the comprehensive annual financial report. As John said, there are 3 different sections in there. So our whole focus in the comprehensive annual financial report is the financial sections. As required by the contract, we are also performing the audit in accordance with government auditing standards. So along with the comprehensive annual financial report, we also issue a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance, and making sure that if there's any material weaknesses or significant deficiency identified in our audit, those will be included in the government auditing standard report. Also, you have engaged us to look at the debt compliance, and we have issued a debt compliance report. And then as required by the AICPA auditing standard, we also have a long listing of required communications to the board of directors here. So we issue that letter accompanied to the annual financial report. In addition, we also do perform and agree upon procedures regarding the appropriation limit. It's kind of every year you adopt the budget and then have your appropriation limit as required by the Prop 13. We are required to go through and recalculate your numbers and making sure that the numbers is actually adopted properly in your through your resolution. So we do actually issue a agree upon procedures report to confirm that your calculation is correct. Okay. So let's jump into the financial statement. So the district actually present a standalone business type activities report. So basically, you do see 3 basic statement in your financial statement. The first statement is your statement of net position, which is a point-in-time financial statement. We do present the June 30, 2019 and 2018. Even the 2018 were audited by your predecessor auditor, MGO. But we actually did spend time looking at their work paper, making sure that we are comfortable with the results that they come up with, and roll forward to the 2019. So at the end of June 30, 2019, the district actually ended with a total net position of about like $439 million compared to last year, 392, which is up by about like $46.6 million. Majority of your net position, including $346 million in net investment in capital asset, which is majority your all of your capital asset with your infrastructure net of all the related debt associated with it. That's $346 million. Restricted is about like $2.7 million, and then remaining $89 million. And you can see there's a big jump in your unrestricted net position, jumping from 56 to 89, which is a really, really good financial results for the fiscal year end June 30, 2019. So there's a condensed income statement. So total operating revenue, $120 million, net of operating expenses of about like $97 million, resulting in operating income of $23 million. All the non-operating revenue, which include your property taxes, also include in your non-operating revenue, investment income, grants income. So it's about like $15 million. So the net income before capital contribution is about up by $38 million. In addition, there are capital contribution of about $8.3 million. That's your $46 million increase in your net position. Okay. If we change everything to from accrual basis to cash basis, which resulting a lot of positive numbers. So even in your cash position, for the current year, there is a drop of about like $2.3 million. So including cash provided by operating activities, that include the cash receipt from customers, payment of all your vendors, and then also you're paying your employees, including pension contributions. So that's the net cash provided by your operating activities is about like $26 million. Net cash provided by non-capital financing activity, majority of the numbers here is the property tax, $10 million. Net cash used in capital and related financing activities basically is the payment of acquisition of capital asset, and then also your payment of long-term debt associated with those capital assets is about like $20 million. Net cash used in investing activities, which is actually converting cash and cash equivalents to your investment, that's about like $18 million outflow. So dropping your cash and cash equivalents from $37 million to $34 million. So pension and OPEB information. I did a 5 years trend analysis, but keep that in mind. Pension since 2015 is under the new standards. So basically the actuarial assumption used, everything is pretty consistent for the for the pension liability. But OPEB liability, since we have like two different standards, so basically for the first 3 years, 2015, 2016, and 2017, we are using your the unfunded actuarial accrual liabilities as the information, so that we can still giving you some idea of what kind of liabilities for the for your OPEB. So since 2015, going up all the to 2018, as you can see, is your liability is going up every single year. And since like this year, there's a big drop from $120 million to $103 million. Compared to your unrestricted net position, $89 million, the pension and OPEB liabilities to unrestricted net position ratio is about like 115, close to 116%. That means if happens today, if you pay off your net pension and OPEB liability, you would have an unrestricted net deficit. Okay.
If I may stop you just for a second,
Sure.
Because Director Weed and I are on the Finance Committee.
Correct.
For the last 9 years. So we're intimately familiar with the numbers here.
Sure.
But for the benefit of our other board members and audience members, I think it's very important to point out the bottom line trend over the last 5 years in terms of how we've been catching up with our pension and OPEB liabilities, and the fact that we've been making prepayments on our obligations, which is unlike any of the other government agencies in our Tri-City area. I think we're one of the most aggressive in this regard in the state of California, and it's now showing too.
Exactly. So as you can see, the first 4 years, in the last 5 years trend is always going up. A couple of the factors going into the liabilities going up is because it changed in discount rate. The investment rate of return has not been reflected correctly, like not comparable to the current market. CalPERS actually dropped their discount rate from 7.65% to 7.15%. That's why back in 2008, like between 17 and 18, there's a big jump in your pension liabilities. As you can see, $79 million to $87 million. But as what you said earlier, the district actually take proactive actions to address the pension liability issues, and now it's coming down to $74 million.
Yeah, I just want to note, also for the benefit of the public here, there was a report just last week or 10 days ago from the state auditor on the financial position of all of the municipalities in the state of California, and our own city of Fremont was the worst of all the cities in Northern California in terms of the stress on its financials because of its pension and OPEB liabilities, and also for lack of liquidity. And so I'm trying to put this in perspective for our community, that even against neighboring agencies here, we are really, as you said, proactively trying to manage our obligations. I'm not sure most citizens in Fremont, the city I live in, are even aware that we are in such a bad financial situation, according to the state auditor's office, and you hear none of our city council members talking about it. It's like the big elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. Wait till the next recession.
Well, it's not only about one city, but there are a lot of cities out there is doing the same thing, because they do not have plans, and also may not necessarily have the resource to address it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have the resources in our city, but we're, I will say politely, not spending the money wisely.
Yeah. All right.
In my opinion. Back to you.
No problem.
Director Sethy and I is on the Finance Committee, and I have a more conservative view on what we have, what we're encountering. And but when you come up to the next two slides, we'll have a chance to discuss it.
Right. So, as you know, pension and OPEB liability is just purely an estimate. So, we rely on the district record. So, basically, what we did on making sure that the actuary actually calculate the pension liability in the appropriate manner is actually from the input. So we test out the census data, making sure that your internal record is actually properly reflected the population and going into the actuary. And as a result, one of the biggest factor affecting the liability is the discount rate being used, because the discount rate is actually reflecting the long-term expected rate of return on from the pension plan investment. So since the district is actually a participant of CalPERS plan, CalPERS actually adopt a 7.15% as the discount rate, which represent a long-term expected rate of return on your investment. So, as of June 30, 2019, which using a measurement date of June 30, 2018, your liability is about like $74.5 million. Because if investment go well, if things are going well, then they can make about 8%. Your liability can drop it down to $45 million. But what if the discount rate dropped by another 1%? Your liability can go up to $110 million. Your funding ratio, because as you recall, in the past we always talk about the funding ratio. As of June 30, 2018, using a 7.15% discount rate, your funding ratio is about like 71%. Okay.
Quick comment here. In 2003, this board, I was on the board at that time, several members, we voted to to give a pay increase, or a pension increase to 2.5% at 55, because it wasn't going to cost us anything. We were well over 100% funded. Then 2008 hit. We dropped dramatically down below 50% at at the higher 7.65 discount rate. It's interesting to look at these numbers with the 7.13 because it's an easy conversion. If you were to fill in the numbers at the next to that, we'd be at 61% funded if we were at using a 6.15, which the PERS consultant has told them was what we should be planning for. They should be planning for. And the far more ambitious, you see some bankrupt public retirement systems like in Dallas, Texas, that have guaranteed 8% and couldn't make it. So we've been treading water at around, we've been in the 60-70% for the last 4 or 5 years. We're edging up. Mm-hmm. We do have a 2032 target to get there, but we're not making great, we're throwing a lot of money at it, and our net liability is decreasing on the ratios because our budget has increased and our activities have increased. But overall, on funding for our retirees, we're still significantly underfunded, and we'll have to make additional commitments each year, which the board is committed to 2032. I'd like to see us potentially expedite that a little bit, because we've seen huge fluctuations based on a drought when people stop using water, and we have a dysfunctional rate structure, mm-hmm. which doesn't match our variable costs with variable revenues and fixed revenues. So we see huge fluctuations mm-hmm. when the people go into conservation.
Sure.
But for what it's worth, I would argue that 6.15 is the more prudent and appropriate discount rate, and at that point we'd be about 60% funded, and we've got about 13 years to catch up. Okay, thank you. I have some more points on the OPEB. Next slide.
Sure. Good analysis.
Yep. So under the other post-employment benefit, which is your medical medical plan for your retirees, so same thing, we are showing the discount rate being used. But you do have two plans. One is for the regular OPEB plan, and then also the MCP liability. So the MCP, because you don't really pre-fund it, so you use a lower discount rate than the normal your regular OPEB plan. But under the OPEB, you basically set pre-funded with the CalPERS Sherbet plan. So they're using a 6.75%, and your MCP plan is using a 3.87%. So total liability, like the net OPEB liability, is about like $29 million. If the investment going great, the liability can drop it down to 23, but if drop by 1%, your liability can go up to $36 million. So currently, your funding ratio for the OPEB plan is close to 49%.
Okay. Comments? The board has adopted a policy of a 6.5% discount rate. The actuarial had used 6.75 a number of years ago, and we continue to do that. So we're not necessarily in sync with the board policy and our actuarial runs in the audit. Starting from zero a few years, not too long ago, when we've tried several false starts, we are now on a plan to 2032 to have this paid off. And hopefully we'll get there. 48% is better than we were a few years ago, and it will show, and it's going to take a continuing contribution. But let me ask, what is the MCP liability, which has a 2.8, 3.87?
Director,
second line.
Director Weed, maybe I can respond to a couple of things there. On the MCP liability, that's the MCP bonus program that was discontinued about 19, 20 years ago, but we still have about 10 or so district employees who will be eligible for that at retirement. And we do have reserves set aside in our normal reserve funds for those costs. In total, it's about $1.5 million. So of the OPEB liability you see here, It's about 95 to 97% the retiree health care program.
Okay.
So it's the MCP bonus program is the other line. And then also just a point of clarification, maybe for Mr. Poon and also for the public, the actuaries at CalPERS and our consulting actuary for OPEB develop our liabilities based on their judgment for what discount rates they think are appropriate or kind of the midpoint. As a board and as a district, we are a little more conservative, and we have a funding policy based on a 6.5% discount rate because we want to make sure we maybe err on the side of being a little more cautious than the other actuaries to make sure we are fully funded.
Okay. Then in clarification on your report, since we have 100% funding identified for the MCP, I would encourage you as you go into your next year's review to possibly handle that independently.
And maybe one more point on that. We have funds set aside in our reserve policy for that. They are not in a dedicated trust fund, though.
Okay.
And because they're not in a dedicated trust fund, the auditor is not going to consider it a fully funded benefit.
It's only 10,000 of the 29 million, so it's a, or say it's a little more.
It's about 1.5 million.
1.5 million of the 25. Oh, so it's a modest amount of the 29 million. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
So the audit results, we issue an unmodified opinion on these financial statements, which represent the financial statement are fairly presented in all material respect in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Significant accounting policy have been consistently applied. The estimates are reasonable, and the disclosure are properly reflected in these financial statements. We do not have any disagreement with management in terms of accounting procedure, like accounting treatment or any assumptions being used in evaluating your pension and OPEB liabilities. There are no material weaknesses or significant deficiency in internal control, and there's no accounting issues that we note during our audit. And in other words, this is a really, really smooth and clean audit on our end. So kudos to your team. We really I also want to take this opportunity to thank your team, led by John and Mariana. They really did a great job in providing a lot of information to us and make our job very, very easy, even as a first-year auditor. So that's conclude my presentations for tonight. Thank you so much.
Board comments?
No. Up until several years ago, we were running a net operating deficit or loss, and we had a curious rate holiday, but we went in and made a significant rate increase, and we also had the end of the drought, so people started using and purchasing water again. We had seen dramatic fluctuations in our annual budget. But for the last 2 years, we've been averaging over $25 million a year to the net, positive in cash, after we paid off and fully funded depreciation. So we are now in a very positive, a sound financial condition. We have OPEB liabilities that could easily eat up all of that, whatever we've saved over the last couple of years, and still have some monies to be spent. But so we're not out of the woods, but it has been a dramatic turnaround in the last 2 years in two aspects. One, the rate increase of 20 and 5%, total 25 over 3 years, still average 8% per year, and the rain. So, thank you.
Just a few comments. First of all, Mr. Poon, thank you very much for all of the effort on your behalf and your team. And I've looked up to the history of your firm too, and see you're quite an entrepreneur in how you've started by yourself and grown it into such a nice outfit. I started on the board in 2010, and one of the first initiatives that Director Weed and I took was to ask for a new auditor and we went to MGO because we wanted a fresh set of eyes to look at our books.
Correct.
And it was really an eye-opener because on the first report that we had from MGO, I believe we had like 14 or 16 different deficiencies that were noted, and that had not been caught by the prior auditor. And so we made it the mission of our finance committee to work through all those deficiencies year by year, and we got it down, to I think 4 and then 2 and then 1 and finally 0, 0. And in all due respect to our former auditor, I think Director Weed and I especially felt it was a good opportunity, I know our finance director did, to again have a fresh set of eyes take a look at our books.
Sure.
It really does help, and I think it adds confidence to the public's view of our district. So I think this was really helpful, and to come in with 0 deficiencies again now, really nice. I'm happy
Yes.
for our district.
Yes.
To piggyback on what Director Weed is saying, when I first started on the board and even prior, I kept arguing that the district really needed to have water sales cover all of its operating expenses, including depreciation and amortization.
Right.
And I work in high technology and have to manage, my career, lots of product lines. And so I always try to make sure that my product is covering all of those expenses. And the district for most of 20 years had not been covering depreciation, amortization. The last 2 years we have, and that's why we have now the positive gain occurring. Instead of burning cash, we're actually creating a buffer for ourselves, which will help us in the future to pay down
Sure.
our unfunded liabilities and help finance our other capital projects and things into the future. So I do want to point out to the community, it's taken us a long time to get to this point, almost 20 years, to get to where we have water sales covering, all of these expenses. And that frees up a lot of cash from property taxes and non-water revenues that come into the district. So that's good news. The accelerated pay down of our OPEB, we started at 0 funding.
Yep.
When I started on the board, now we're, at a pretty healthy clip.
Sure.
We've got about maybe 2/3 of it paid down.
Yeah.
And, okay. I actually agree with Director Weed. It depends on what your discount rate is.
Depending on the discount rate.
Yeah, and we're both, we like to use the more conservative discount rate,
Sure.
which tells us what our, real exposure might be. We have other utilities, agencies, cities around us that take the most optimistic look into the future. We've done the opposite. So that's been good. I don't really have a lot of questions on the report because Director Weed and I think we spent an hour and a half or
Sure.
more asking questions in
Yep.
our finance committee, and I just want to again compliment your team.
Thank you so much.
Good work.
Thank you.
No questions at the moment.
I'd like to thank you for coming down, and thank you for the report.
It's our pleasure.
I'd like to thank the staff for all the efforts they've put also into this as well. It certainly reflects, I know our 2 directors on the far end of the table, they're very critical, and I wouldn't want to face them with an audit, as an audit guy coming in to do it, because they're sharp. I may not necessarily agree with some of their thoughts and stuff, but yes, they are very sharp, and I'm very happy to have them going through this and trust them very well. So once again, I'd like to thank you for coming down tonight.
Thank you so much.
And, no further comments. I guess we could move on then, because I don't believe there's anything.
There is a
Or we have to-
recommendation to, by motion, accept the report.
We do need a motion.
I'll make the the staff, move for the staff recommendation here.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Director Weed?
I'll second it.
Motion is second for
Your Finance Committee
Thank you very
approves.
much. Thank you.
Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
All right.
and Gunther.
Aye. Moving on, 5.7, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item 5.7 relates to professional services that staff is requesting for grant management services. As you know, our grants team here has been very successful in recent years, and we're excited to continue that work. So I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Myers, who will cover this item.
Thank you, Ms. Heides. In 2016, the Alameda County Water District retained West Yost Associates to provide grant management services, and the following year extended that original agreement for 2 additional years. During that time, West Yost Associates developed the district's funding strategic plan, monitored new grant funding opportunities, represented the district's projects to funding agencies, and provided as-needed support for the preparation of grant applications. Their amended agreement expired on February 28, 2019. With a vast array of state and federal grant funding expected to remain available for district projects, and with several successful grants secured totaling over $14.9 million for capital projects, staff issued a request for proposals for grant management services. The new agreement not only provides for services for securing additional grant funding, it also includes additional scope elements to provide assistance for administration activities, such as compliance monitoring and reporting as needed for awarded grants. There are adequate funds in the fiscal year 2019-2020 and fiscal year 2020-2021 for budgets to cover this expenditure. This item was reviewed at the Water Resources and Conservation Committee on October 23, 2019. Board authorization of this item will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 2.1, maintain and enhance sustainability and reliability of local and regional water supplies, goal 2.3, evaluate new and innovative water management concepts, and goal 3.2, ensure cost reasonableness. So the recommendation is by motion, authorize the general manager to 1, execute a professional services agreement with West Yost Associates for grant management services for a not to exceed amount of $230,000 during the 2-year base term, and 2, execute up to 3 one-year extensions based on satisfactory performance in the amounts of $119,025, $123,191, and $127,503, which include an escalation of up to 3.5% per year for a total amount of $599,719 over the potential 5-year period. So with that, I would like to be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Amen.
No questions. I would move to accept the staff recommendation here.
I'll second.
Motion is second, no further comments. Secretary Caldwell.
Directors Akbari,
Aye.
Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye. Director Akbari will be stepping out for a few moments.
I will be recusing myself from item 5.8 because of a common law conflict of interest due to the property falling within a radius, a 1,000-foot radius of property that I have an interest in.
Who are you referring to?
Okay. Item 5.8 relates to additional professional services for 2 of our booster stations, and I will turn that over to Mr. Stevenson to cover this item.
Thank you, Ms. Heides. This is authorization of professional services agreement for engineering services for the Kirtner Road Booster Station and Canyon Heights Booster Station upgrade projects. The Kirtner Road Booster Station upgrade project and the Canyon Heights Booster Station upgrade project require electrical and control system improvements and associated structural upgrades at both stations. In addition, significant mechanical, pumping, and piping improvements are required at the Kirtner Road Booster Station. Due to similarities in design scopes between the 2 projects, the district intends to award a single professional services agreement for engineering design and environmental services for both projects. There's adequate funding in the capital improvement program budget for the work. The projects were reviewed with the Engineering and Information Technology Committee on October 16, 2019. Board authorization of these services will help meet the district's strategic plan goal 1.1, efficiently manage and maintain our infrastructure to ensure reliability. So just a quick note, these are the full suite of engineering services to support 2 separate booster station upgrade projects. As you can see, one's Canyon Heights and one's Kirtner Road. So there are significant upgrades required at each booster station, and both of these booster stations are critical for the operation of our system. So this includes all phases of design, drawings and specifications, includes CEQA documentation for each project, permitting assistance, bidding and construction support, and related services. So staff's recommendation is by motion, authorize the general manager to execute a professional services agreement with Schaff and Wheeler Consulting Civil Engineers in an amount not to exceed $1,134,331.30 for engineering, design, permitting, environmental services, and construction support, and including optional geotechnical investigation and topographic and boundary survey services, which may be added to the agreement by the district as needed for the Kirtner Road Booster Station Upgrade Project and Canyon Heights Booster Station Upgrade Project, Job 21247 and 21267. And I'd be happy to address any questions.
I have a question here, and I realize we're down to 3 directors here to vote on this. Normally, the engineering group looks for any conflicts based on a director's home address, right?
Based upon any of the properties that the director has signaled that they have some financial interest in.
Okay. I don't believe that my home is within 1,000 feet of the Kirtner Road booster, but I'm not sure.
It is not, and based upon the agenda item map that was provided, you're outside the 1,000-foot radius from the Kirtner Road site.
Okay, good. Just want to be up enough that I'm
Better safe than sorry.
able to vote here properly. So I have no other questions.
The question I have with the consultant and the scope of work.
Mm-hmm.
We recently encountered a new experience where we had preemptive power shut-off to facilities. I believe the Canyon Heights booster station was one of those facilities.
Correct.
And it was suggested in discussions, I haven't seen it in writing, that we would be looking for more than one source of electrical power, one network cluster from PG&E in order to service this, so we would not have to go to backup power if they did one of these preemptive cutoffs, which will predominantly be in the hill area, not in the urban areas. Would that analysis and support be part of this scope of work, or would it have to be added to, and would this be the natural consultant to use for that type of work?
So upgrades to the electrical service to the booster station are not included in this scope of work. Upgrades to the electrical gear, and including the generator connections, emergency power connections, are all included in this scope of work. So the project would benefit the power reliability of the site through the upgrades to the electrical system on the site. But anything off the site is not currently in the scope of services.
So the ability on site to be able to connect to an alternate source of power by flipping a switch or pulling a breaker is in the future. But it would be potentially, these people would be knowledgeable of what is being done, and we might be able to extend the terms of this contract to take on those additional efforts.
Correct. This consultant has the expertise required to deal with all sorts of electrical issues on the site.
One of the other thoughts was the need to have more mobile generators that we could run to booster stations and be able to rapidly have a rapid hookup. Would that be conceivably part of this project or an addendum to the project?
The project as scoped now would support improvements that would allow the portable generators to be hooked up to the existing station. It also provides for a portable pump or a separate pump to be added to the site. Beyond that, I'm not sure about the configuration you're talking about, but that's what's in the scope here.
Okay, and the final one is at the Aqua conference, beware sending us off the reservation here. There were some interesting presentations by a company which was using natural gas to power electric generators, and the ability to have a natural gas hookup which would not be subject to preemptive cutoffs of power struck me as being one of the more interesting capabilities. If they could hook up to a 2-inch gas line and give as much as 400 plus kilowatts of power, enough to power a treatment plant, by just driving up to the facility if we were to lose the power. So there again, as you're looking at alternate power sources, I'd encourage you to see if there's gas nearby and if a portable generator which was gas powered could be driven to the site.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one more question. I know where the Canyon Heights booster station is. Where exactly is the Kirtner Road booster station? I should know this because it's in my neighborhood.
It's kind of hidden away. It's actually on Kirtner Road, just I think south of Klamath.
So it's close to the Alameda Reservoir?
Yes. Yeah.
I think I know where it is, on the shoulder of the road.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit deceiving looking at the site from the roadway.
Yeah.
Because it's a very small footprint. There's what you see along, it's really part of the pump station is right there at the embankment of Agua Fria.
Yeah.
Which, in the station itself goes down several stories underground, and so most of the infrastructure is well below ground.
Okay, I know where it is now. They have the hand railing there,
Yeah.
so you don't fall off
Correct.
over into the creek. Okay,
Right.
got it.
Other comments, questions? Have a motion?
I will move to accept the staff recommendation on item 5.8.
Oh, second.
Motion and second. Secretary call roll, please.
Director Sethy,
Aye.
Weed,
Aye.
and Gunther.
Aye.
And I would like to request a short break if we might be able to fit
Certainly.
one in.
What do you think, Paul? 5 minutes?
Yeah,
We'll go to 20 of, make it even.
okay. What I've read,
We're a little bit past our break
artesian
time
wells,
here.
another thing to see here in the community.
And, so I'm going to call
This
the
is-
meeting
this
back
is
to
not-
order.
This is a trust here.
No, Junior.
don't discriminate.
It's one of the trusts.
We're going to come back to order?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. It is 7:45, meeting's back in order. Moving on to reports.
Yes, tonight there are a number of reports in your packet. We don't have anything specific to present or share on these items, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Comments on the reports. The harness report still looks lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I will just note on our rainfall report through today, we are essentially at 0 rainfall and below our worst year ever, and well below average.
Well, we have an adequate reserve if the media kicks in, but we don't. The irony is we've got ample water supply.
I hear there's rain coming next week.
I'm hopeful.
Possible drizzle tonight.
Okay.
Okay, no comments on reports.
Water production's over.
Let's see.
Sales.
Yeah.
Slowness of the computer here. Moving on, I believe we have a general manager's report.
We do. There's no staff presentations, but we do have a couple of quick general managers reports tonight. There's one listed here on the agenda. I will turn it over to Mr. Ed Stevenson to cover the 2019 MESAC Award.
Thank you, Ms. Heides, and I am really pleased to report this, especially with our manager of IT in the audience, Aziz, who had a big hand in this. And I'm pleased to report that, again, in 2019, the district, and I'll show it here, is the recipient of the Municipal Information Systems Association of California, or MESAC, Excellence in Information Technology Practices Award. And it's quite an achievement. We were successful in achieving this last year, but at the lower level. This year we're at the highest level, outstanding. So I just want to pay some kudos to Aziz and his team for the work that went into this. And I'll read just a little bit from the letter we received from MESAC. The Municipal Information Systems Association of California established the Excellence in Information Technology Practices Award to recognize exemplary information technology practices. This award signifies that your agency met or exceeded MESAC standards in the technology-focused areas of, deep breath, budget and strategic planning, purchasing, operations and staffing, customer satisfaction, Internet, project management, professional development and training, disaster preparedness and recovery, policies and procedures, and security. So it's quite an audit process of our IT program, and so very, very pleased to report that we were successful this year again, and this time at the highest level. So it's a small, we're part of a small club across the state who was able to achieve this level, and again, kudos to our IT staff. That's my report.
Thank you very much.
Congrats, Aziz.
Congratulations as well. Okay, moving on then.
We had one other quick item on GM reports. My apologies, it's not on the agenda, but I did want to turn it over to Ms. Myers to share some good news.
Thank you, Ms. Heides. I am pleased to share that on October 18, 2019, the district was informed that we received a preliminary grant award for up to $613,048, which is anticipated to cover half of the district's Niles Cone groundwater basin extraction well site evaluation project. This project will evaluate 3 locations in the central portion of the basin where groundwater wells can potentially be sited to remove brackish water in the Centerville Fremont aquifer. Staff will be bringing an item to the next Board of Directors meeting on this, but wanted the board to be aware of this recent good news.
If you're able to extract it, where would it go?
So the plan right now is to look at it. Once we figure out the potential locations, they are strategically located in areas near where the lines to desal go.
Nice.
Okay.
Nope, that's it.
Okay, then we'll move on to director reports and meetings, which I would like to say I'm very jealous of. And these look like they were all pretty good meetings to go to. And a couple of lovely tours there, and I wish I would. But nonetheless, was not able to.
Okay, well, Director Akbari and I attended the Water Education Foundation Northern California Water Tour. Left from Sacramento Airport at early one morning at 7:30 and returned 3 days later in the later afternoon to the same location. You see a lot of what as you go through and look at the what's being done. I found one of the most informative to be the Sites Reservoir, because I had not realized that going for Proposition 1 monies, the Sites Reservoir was rated initially with 0 public benefits. They went back and came up, and it's a project which in 2015 dollars we were told would be about over $5 billion. It's been suggested that it would be now over $8 billion. 1.8 million acre feet. In order to get $870 million, about 12 to 15% of the total cost, they agreed to give up 3/4 of the water. The only revenue waters, this 1.8 million, will be 450,000 acre feet. It quadrupled the cost of the water coming out of the dam. The farmers have bailed. The only prospective buyer right now is the Met, and the Met has said the only way they will accept that water is if the tunnels are completed. It's put that project on a longer-term hold. The cost per 1,000 acre feet of storage for revenue water may well be approaching $20 million per 1,000 acre feet. At least 16 to 20 million, depending on what numbers you use. It has become they've accepted the monies, but they kept, in order to keep, I believe, in order to keep their staffing alive, and they kept their employment and kept their project going. But it makes no economic sense, and under its current design, in the near term or even in the midterm. There was an alternative suggested in part by, in a submittal by Pierce Huang, who was also on the tour, that the Calusa begins with a T, Thelma Canal, which dead ends about 13 miles from Knight's Ferry, could be a source of taking the water and putting a smaller tunnel with a siphon effect, could bring water down, bypassing the proposed Cal Water Fix tunnel. But that would threaten the California Water Fix. Much like I believe Del Valle was not supported by DWR because it was viewed by some to be a threat to the California Water Fix. Everything was focused on the big tunnel. So we have some curious water issues here. And planning in the state, and that would be just one example. Another one was where they talked about the money that was being spent on to bring salmon upstream, and in the Shasta area, the capital costs are running about $1 million per salmon, so per year. So every fish they get per year costs them in capital costs about $1 million. Not dissimilar from some other examples I'll give later. Thank you.
Did you want to talk about your other trips, or?
Oh, we can go down the line because
we'll
follow up on item 1, 7.1.
Okay. Director, we covered Sites Reservoir, which was a big portion of the tour. I think one of the more interesting parts of the tour that I found was habitat restoration for migratory fish. We got to visit a project where they're using old tree stumps and boulders and putting them into the middle of the canals there, and fish can use that to kind of hide from predators. So that was one of the interesting ideas that we got to see in action. But otherwise, it was a pretty good tour, I think.
Well, very informative, very interesting.
Very informative, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Move on, then I guess Director Sethy.
Region 3. So, I had signed up to go on the Aqua Region 3 event that was a one-day event up at Nevada Irrigation District. I was in the middle of vacation, but took one day out to attend this event. It was focused on watershed management. Nevada Irrigation District is a county that runs kind of from the middle of the state very narrowly to the California-Nevada border, and is considered the first county in California. So all of our representatives, Senate District 1, Assembly District 1, our Congressional District 1 are all based around Nevada County. They're managing 250,000 acres of watershed, huge amount of watershed, multiple reservoirs and lakes and other things. It was very interesting to go out with them and see what they're doing. And primary purpose for holding this event was that it's considered one of the most threatened communities, Nevada City and Grass Valley, where they could have a fire tornado similar to what hit Paradise, where it comes down the valley there and hits both the town and the city, and there's only one exit out, which is the primary road from Auburn up into the hills there. So they were showing all the preventive fire things that they had been working on over the years, and with the U.S. Forest Service too, which has a lot of property up there. It was very interesting. I did bring back one thing for the staff here, which I found fascinating, and I'm hoping we can discuss in a future Water Resources Committee meeting. They had a water efficient demonstration garden on their campus that was designed and maintained in cooperation with the University of California Cooperative Extension, which is under the their agriculture group at UC Davis. And as I was touring around after our day's event to look around the outskirts of town, I came across the University of California Cooperative Extension nursery. So I went in there, and they actually have things for sale, and it was really a beautiful place to go into. So I asked some questions because I thought, I asked district staff and then later the University of California folks whether we might be able to involve ourselves in a program like this, because it's not just drought-tolerant gardening. They're into all aspects of gardening and composting and everything else. So I come to learn that there is a cooperative extension in every county of the state. One is headquartered right here on Franklin Street in Oakland, and we have 4 demonstration gardens in Alameda County, Albany, Oakland, Livermore, and guess what? Fremont, at Quarry Lakes. I couldn't believe it. Right here in our own backyard. So if you go to the website, I haven't been out there to take a look at it, but I have some pictures here. It's actually quite extensive. And this was the last one that was developed in the county, and it was done in conjunction with East Bay Regional Parks District. And I was thinking perhaps next year, as you're planning out a schedule, I know we had an event with Bosca that I attended one time at Reagan's Nursery, but I think having an outdoor water conservation class where we could do it at Quarry Lakes would really be interesting. I also think we ought to promote this through our PR group, maybe into the Aqueduct, point it out for folks to go visit, put it in the Tri-City Voice. There's a lot of opportunities to, I think, partner here with Bosca and with the University Extension. So I'll pass this down. I think it will go to Michelle Myers, group representative.
Thank you. We will certainly pass that along.
So that's my report for 7.2.
7.3, do you want to take that on?
You go first.
Okay. State of the Estuary Conference. As I comment, interesting. There was very few water directors there. I didn't recognize very few people. It was primarily academic. As I noted earlier, the estuary, I think, it was interesting to watch the discussion and dancing around the issues and what issues were important to them. They took up over half a day talking about environmental justice, and the presentations were awkward, if I were to be polite. They brought in some people who were community organizers just talk about how they did community organization in their communities around the area, and some professors, one from Davis, another one from Modesto, and or Merced, and talked in very general terms. The group itself said, well, we think if we put in parks, that will help some of the lower income areas. But we're talking about billions of dollars of expenditure for this effort, and they had a very difficult time trying to make a connection with the environmental justice and the estuary restoration. They tried. I would argue without success. They talked about, well, the water agencies were good for helping them to put together grants because there were staff at the water agencies that could do it. But they were worried that the people helping them were not ethnically diverse. And I felt that that was a day of, it's an interesting, we've seen it now at the State Water Resources Control Board, which environmental justice has become a primary focus. This was the awkward effort of this environmental group to see if they could also take it on. The next was extraordinary studies on the estuary and the delta. But the water master did report that another 2 feet of sea level rise, and there's no way they can prevent the saltwater intrusion and into the delta with under the current reservoirs. And yet at every other presentation you talked about anywhere from up to 10 feet of sea level rise on its way. That was a remarkable intellectual disconnect that no one wanted to address. My summary: the Corps of Engineers reported in the late 90s that the delta was doomed to be an inland salton sea. I felt that they're having a difficult time coming to grips with that, but it will be a very well-studied demise. Thank you.
I actually agree with all of those observations of Director Weed from the conference. You know, I thought it was educational. I found a lot of the what was presented outside of the sessions. They had maybe about 100 exhibits from different people with lots of data and technical analysis and stuff. So I spent quite a bit of my time going through all of those different more technical studies and things that were exhibited there. I did come away with 3 things that I wanted to talk about real quick. One, Alameda Creek Alliance had a very good setup of everything that has been going on in terms of fish restoration on Alameda Creek and the upper watershed. And next to it was an exhibit from East Bay Regional Park District and one other conservation group on restoring fish on the Pinole Creek River. And they had to build a tunnel and fish ladder under Highway 80. When they originally built Highway 80, they had stopped the fish from migrating up into the Walnut Creek watershed. So I got to talking with the biologist for East Bay Mud, and then the lady representing the other group, and I said I would really be interested in getting the data on the fish that are now returning after you've gotten all this project work done, and I told them what we're doing on Alameda Creek. Well, they don't publish the data. They did have it there to show me, but they don't put it on their website because they don't want to be accused of producing gold-plated fish. Only 17 fish returned 3 years ago, 1 2 years ago, and something like 6 or 7 last year. So they're not having much success with that restoration effort, which I found disappointing because I have high hopes for what we might be able to do here on Alameda Creek. But, and I shared this with Director Weed, they are expressly not sharing the data, but maybe through back channels you can stay up to date with East Bay Mud from time to time on what's going on up there. So, second, I'll pass this along to staff too. I found this presentation that somebody was giving on the Rising Tides Bay Shoreline Flood Explorer, which is something you can link into on the internet. Really fascinating, because you can go through every section of the Bay Area, and I purposefully went through our district area to see what's, you know, on their floodplain. I give this to staff and you can check it out. Lastly, I have something to share and also a request. Hetch Hetchy San Francisco was presenting during lunch at one of the exhibits there what they're doing over at the Sunol Regional Park. And we all know Betsy Laup Rhodes at San Francisco. She wrote this article, The Seeds of Change for Native Plant Restoration at SFPUC. And it talks about how they have all these invasive and predatory phytophthora, I hope I say that correctly, that is affecting all of the various species of oak trees around the Bay Area and in the upper watersheds. So we've now collected seeds from 85 different varieties of native species up here in the Alameda Creek watershed and over on the peninsula, and are growing these native plants over in Sunol. But what I would like to explore is, and I was just out there a couple of days ago watching some of the construction at the temple. I managed to get through. I just showed my badge from ACWD. They said no, and nobody permitted inside, but I said, okay, I'm going to go. So they've got quite a project going on over there, and what I would like to see ACWD explore, maybe you can bring this to the Water Resources Committee, is being a partner with San Francisco in the development of their educational center over there. It's going to be conference center, educational center. They're going to do tours. There's a nursery over there. And their partners to date are the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, Marin Municipal Water District, Santa Clara Valley Water District, East Bay Regional Parks District, and the Mid-Peninsula Open Space District. And I feel like we're missing out on a real opportunity as a water agency to participate in this, because this is our watershed. This is the Alameda Creek watershed we're talking about. And it might require that we make a small investment. I don't know what their budget is. There might be an initiation fee to join. But in the long run, this is going to be a great educational resource for students K through 12 in our community, for college students as well, for more advanced levels of learning about watershed activity. And I find this absolutely fascinating what they're working on, and I don't want us to be left out. So I'll pass this along, and I would hope that you could bring this to our Water Resources Committee to explore partnering with San Francisco.
Thank you. We'll take a look at the information.
I'll move on into 7.4. Very short report. Director Weed and I attended with our general manager, Mr. Shaver. I was not overwhelmed by what I heard at the Water Summit. I didn't really learn anything new, but I think that it's important to be there just to hear things over and over again from the top state leaders, everybody involved in water, and to make our own presence known too. So it was a really good opportunity to, I guess sometimes you have to listen to things 3, 4, 5 times over and over again before it sinks in. But I'm proud of the people who have come in under Governor Newsom and are really taking on a lot of responsibility trying to move things forward. But I will say this, life is really complicated. It doesn't matter where you look. It's really complicated. And so, kind of like Director Gunther, I'm pulling for these folks. I hope they can get the things done that they want to accomplish. That's it for that one. And I have a final comment I'd like to make on something else. The Newark City Council tonight is considering what to do with Area 4 over in Newark. And we used to have a piece of property over there with an old house. So yesterday, after attending the Alameda County Special Districts meeting over at Union Sanitary District, I went out to that property over the railroad tracks and way out there. Had to park my car and walk the rest of the way. But I remember years back we had a home there. I didn't find it. I guess it's been demolished. And I have been against this proposed development of this property going back to the early 90s when it was first proposed. And the 2 current owners, John Sobrato and the Arriaga Company, you know, I've known both developers over the years, and these gentlemen that really are multi-billionaires, you know, that created their wealth right here in the valley on development. And I think it's shameful that they would even think about developing this property. I think it really belongs in the Don Edwards regional system, which would take some federal efforts. And I think it's shameful that it's even before the Newark City Council to consider developing this property. They want to put in about 500 executive level homes on 570 acres of property. So about not all of it is developed. But I think everything west of the rail line out to the bay should just be preserved. And so I'm very interested in seeing what happens, the result of their meeting, which started at 7:30 tonight. And then I have one very last thing. The Area 4. Oh, I'm going to report on the meeting of the Alameda County Special Districts Association tonight, even though I would normally report next month, because I think this is important for us, and hopefully we can have our staff contact USD. So the general manager, Paul Eldridge, gave a really nice presentation that I think we should get a hold of on the future of Union Sanitary District, and they are going to completely remake their campus that they have, the 33 acres, and this has not been presented to the public yet. They're going to tear down their current administration building and build a new one in the corner of their property because they found it was too expensive to make all the seismic improvements to their current building and retrofit, and it was cheaper to build a brand new building and tear down the old one. And then they're going to put in some new mixers and clarifiers on the property. In total, their 10-year CIP is close to $670 million. Imagine. And that's almost all of that money is going into that site for future sanitation for the Tri-City area for the, decades out into the future, to the 21st century, 22nd century. So I was fascinated by the amount of dollars going into their CIP program and knowing what's going into our CIP, and then you have to factor in all the other future costs from other things going on in our community. This is going to be billions of dollars of investments, you know, that are going to hit the ratepayers. Currently, USD is the third lowest in rates among Bay Area, Alameda County comparisons. But the ratepayers in our district are going to get hit with a really big bill here, and this doesn't include all the infrastructure improvements for the sewer lines and everything like that. So I talked to Paul Eldridge after the meeting and about their public outreach, and he says he has ACWD right at the top of his list to come here and give a presentation on and share all of this with us. So that's my report.
Thank you. All right. Excuse me. I'd note that I also attended the Water Summit, and interesting presentations. This was a one-day trip to Sacramento. The State Water Resources Control Board, which is pushing unimpaired flows, the staff noted that the only legal authority they have in controlling water is flows. The the variety of other options that are being presented by the water community in lieu of unimpaired flows are arguably not within their current legislative authorization. In an earlier meeting, over a year ago, as one representative pointed out, that it's pretty easy to dictate a flow rate because you've got gauging stations. It's hard to look at any of the other alternatives. So there's also a staffing issue. So we'll see how the unimpaired flow argument comes with the various other solutions being proposed by the water community. And given the makeup of some of the commissions, I'm not encouraged. I think we'll be on unimpaired flows. About to follow up on several of the points you made. I'm not sure which one to jump in on first. It would be interesting to me to see what the floor elevation of the new building for the Union Sanitary District headquarters will be compared to the floor elevation of the existing building. Sea level rise is coming. Whether it's 2 feet or 10 feet in the next 100 years, which was one of the discussions we had, it's still there. And so we slipped in almost to a director comment as opposed to a report. I had left a note when you had the work session. I unfortunately was not able to attend. That I have a concern on Sigma and the liabilities that might be imposed upon districts that are deemed to be the managers of a groundwater basin. I had a chance at the Water Summit to talk to the legal counsel for the committee, which helped draft the Sigma, who did draft Sigma and got it through, and asked if that had been a real issue that had come up, particularly for coastal districts such as our own, where we have had historically artesian conditions, and now with sea level rise, the other potential for development of perched water tables and groundwater problems along the coast. And particularly as new development pushes up against the coast, some of it with below-grade parking structures. Will we find ourselves in an area where we have to reduce the groundwater, the water table, in order to protect much of this new development, and therefore impact our overall operations. It would put our operational margins into a fairly thin layer, because one of the advantages now we can do is we can allow significant fluctuations in the groundwater table as we've during the seasons when we bring in the water or don't, and for recharge. The council indicated that it was not an issue that had been addressed. They were looking at overdraft. But I think our serious concern is, as I've looked at several of these developments, an 802,000 square foot office complex at 84 and Paseo Padre, at ground elevations as low as 9 feet, up to 15 feet on the site. A event center, conference center with subterranean parking. The result was they were going to build a bathtub effect, but bathtubs float when they get when the groundwater comes up at a certain level. Additional developments, as was mentioned here in Area 4 in Newark, that are there. So currently FEMA is at 11.5 feet. We're building below that, or at that. There's a suggestion that FEMA is about to raise that level by 3 feet to 14.5 feet, which puts many of these new projects underwater. How much freeboard should we be requesting, and will we be liable? We'll see.
If I could just pick up on your comments there. I actually meant to ask some questions about Area 4, which is why I brought it up. First of all, do we own a parcel out there presently? Is there an ACWD interest in Area 4?
As far as I'm aware, the only parcel remaining that we own is just east of the railroad tracks, right on the Ohlone back part of their campus. So I'm not aware of a currently owned ACWD parcel on the west side of the tracks.
I thought that we had an ACWD property, a house. I'm remembering this from years back, before I was on the board. At the very end of Stevenson Boulevard, when you went over the railroad tracks, on the left-hand side, I used to remember there was a house there. And for some reason, John, you might remember this, I thought that Gene Rhodes acquired this property as attorney for the Water District or something. I forget now. But I couldn't find anything there. But so we don't own anything.
Not to my knowledge. It's something that we can just look at to confirm, but to my knowledge, we don't own property over there.
Okay.
We may have at one time, but to my knowledge.
And here's the other set of questions. They're talking about having to fill in all of that marshy area with close to 1.7 million cubic yards of material, rock and soil and everything. That's 100,000 truckloads that will have to go in and fill before they can put these luxury homes there. This is going before the city council. Has it come before us in any pre-development phase to figure out water and sewer utilities, underground electricity, how this all might be affected by what, might be sea level rise in that area?
So CEQA has come before us, and we've made comments on CEQA on a whole suite of issues. We have yet to receive any actual development plans for the site. We've seen conceptual plans associated with the entitlement process, but we've not seen any real utility plans yet. From a distribution planning standpoint, we've provided for connections in the water system surrounding that area, and we have requirements related to looping and redundancy and so forth for water service, but we have yet to see any detailed engineering plans of any kind.
Would potential water pipelines and sewer lines have to go under the railroad tracks?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the City of Newark has been trying to do a lot of building lately to increase their property tax base. But I will just express publicly, I think this is I've been against it from day one, 30 years back. So I hope it doesn't go through.
Okay. No further comments? Director requests? I believe we're going to move into closed session. We have 2 items this evening.
It is now 8:27, and the board is going to convene in closed session for 2 items. Item 8.1 is pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957, threat to public services or facilities, consultation with manager of engineering and technology services, manager of operations and maintenance, and general counsel. And the second closed session, pursuant to its item number 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators. The property is the N3 Cattle Company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. The assessor parcel numbers were furnished by the owner's representative and are attached to the agenda. The agency negotiators, Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson. Negotiating parties, N3 Cattle Ranch Company, LLC, REN Jr. and REN Jr. TR. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment.
That at 8:27, we'll adjourn closed session. Okay, it's 11:40 p.m., 23:40. The board has returned from closed session.
Yeah, and Mr. President, I'm happy to give the open session report. The board met in closed session for 2 items. Item 8.1, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54957, threat to public services or facilities, consultation with manager of engineering and technology services, manager of operations and maintenance, and general counsel. And in that closed session, no action was taken. And for the second closed session, under item 8.2, pursuant to California Government Code Section 54956.8, conference with real property negotiators, property N3 Cattle Company, consisting of 131 parcels and approximately 50,535 acres in Alameda County, Santa Clara County, San Joaquin County, and Stanislaus County. Assessor parcel numbers were furnished by the owner's representative and are attached to this agenda. The agency negotiators, Robert Shaver and Ed Stevenson. Negotiating parties, N3 Cattle Company, LLC, REN Jr. and REN Jr. TR. Under negotiation, price and terms of payment. And in that closed session, the board gave direction to its agency negotiator. And that concludes the open session report.
Further comments? With that, I'm going to declare the meeting closed at 11:40.